Hello, Lincoln County, North Carolina. My name is Austin Flannery, and I'm a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I work for the Weather Forecast Office in the Tampa Bay area on the west coast of Florida. Now, if I asked you about a specific weather phenomenon that probably comes to mind when you think of Florida weather, I imagine a lot of you would say the hurricane. Well, what exactly is a hurricane, and where do they form?
Well, in its most basic sense, it's just a special type of tropical cyclone that has winds of at least 74 miles per hour. Hurricanes are very large in nature. They can grow as tall as 50,000 feet high. It's about 10 miles high in case you think in miles instead of feet. They're at least 125 miles across, but in many cases are much larger than this. And in order to actually be called a hurricane, it has to form in the Atlantic and move towards the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, or southern coast of the United States, or it has to form in the Pacific, near the coast of the United States, Mexico, or other countries of Central America, such as Panama or Costa Rica, and then move towards Hawaii. That is where we see actual hurricanes that form. To give you a visual representation of where this area is, but you also notice on this map that there are typhoons and cyclones also listed. These are the exact same thing as a hurricane, they just form in a different part of the world, and that is why they get a different name. Now, ultimately, you need a few things to come together just right to get a hurricane. It's like baking a cake. If you get your ingredients wrong, you don't add the right ingredients or the right amount of ingredients, you're not going to actually get a hurricane to form. There are several hazards associated with a hurricane that happen at the coast. And since I work in an office that's located at the coast, we're concerned about these. That would be storm surge. This is the most dangerous element that we experience at the coast. This is water that is displaced by the hurricane, sort of like if you took a block of wood in a bathtub and pushed it really fast, it would force all the water up to the edge of the tub. The same thing happens in the ocean when a hurricane is approaching. It acts like that block of wood to force all the water up on land. And when that happens, it can destroy homes, businesses, roads, and it can be very, very dangerous to life. High winds, of course, are another concern. With winds over 74 miles per hour, it can cause damage like this, where it sends a piece of plywood through a palm tree. Other flooding that's not directly associated with the storm surge, but just from all the heavy rain, is another concern. And of course, tornadoes are always a concern with a hurricane, just like they are with other big weather systems across the United States.
So now we know a little bit more about the science behind hurricanes, and we've seen the impacts they can have for coastal communities. Needless to say, hurricanes can be dangerous, even deadly, for the areas that they impact, and in some cases can travel hundreds of miles inland. While they weaken as they do so, they can still be very impactful, bringing heavy rain, flooding, tornadoes, and other hazards as well to inland areas. In fact, I happen to know a meteorologist who works in your area. Andrew Kimball works for the National Weather Service Greenville-Spartanburg Weather Forecast Office, and as a part of his job, he monitors the weather for Lincoln County, North Carolina. He's going to tell you a little bit more about the impacts you can expect in your area from a hurricane.
Hello, my name is Andrew Kimball, and I am a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. And I work at a forecast office in Greenville-Spartanburg in South Carolina. Our office is responsible for 46 counties and includes a big portion of western North Carolina, including Lincoln County, and also the upstate of South Carolina and 6 counties in northeast Georgia. So how often do tropical systems affect the Charlotte area? Well, we went to this database and plotted any tropical cyclone that tracked within 100 miles of Charlotte, and the database goes back to 1850. So just shy of about 170 years worth of data, you can see there have been a lot of tropical cyclones that have tracked in our area. Zooming in and showing that circle that represents the 100-mile radius around Charlotte, you can't see the county lines, so I point out where Lincoln County is. You notice there's one orange track that's just west of Lincoln County. That storm was Hurricane Hugo back in 1989. That track is orange because Hurricane Hugo was still a Category 2 hurricane when it tracked into western North Carolina. So now I'm going to talk about 4 main impacts that you can expect even well inland with tropical cyclones. The first one is inland flooding. And I would say this is the most common and arguably the most dangerous threat that you can experience with tropical cyclones inland from the coast. In fact, according to a former director of the National Hurricane Center, over the last 30 years, inland flooding has been responsible for more than half of the deaths associated with tropical cyclones in the United States. So that is more than other types of hazards associated with hurricanes, including winds and storm surge. How do you prepare for inland flooding? Well, the main things to keep in mind is where you're located. If your home is near a creek or a stream, or in an otherwise low-lying area, you're probably at an increased risk of being inundated by floodwaters in a tropical system. Another thing is to make sure that you have an emergency kit ready in case you get trapped in your home due to floodwaters. And then finally, I really want to point out that it's never safe to drive into floodwaters or even around barricades that indicate a road is closed due to floodwaters. And the reason for that is if you're in your car and you're looking out the window and you see water swiftly moving across the road, you can't tell how deep that water is from your vehicle. And it doesn't take very much water to be able to sweep a vehicle off the road. The second threat I'll talk about, which is kind of related to the first one, is debris flows. And debris flows happen when you get heavy rainfall over a short period of time over steep terrain. The main thing is to assess your risk. If you live on steep terrain if you are on a slope, then you are at an increased risk, and you should have an evacuation plan ready just in case you need to leave quickly. The third threat I'll talk about is wind. And this is the less common threat for area than flooding, but it still does happen. How to prepare for winds, the main thing to take, there's two big things you want to keep in mind, and that is, do any trees around your house that may need to be trimmed? Do they have large limbs over the house? Could there be some dead trees that could be susceptible to falling in high winds? The second thing is to look at your yard and see if there are any loose objects that might need to be secured. And then finally, once a system is affecting your area, stay inside and away from windows. The final threat I'll talk about is tornadoes. This is really any tornado threat. It doesn't have to be associated with hurricanes. The biggest key is to have a way to receive a tornado warning. So once you have a way to receive warnings, you also want to be able to know where you're going to go to shelter if you end up being under threat. So where to go when sheltering from a tornado? Obviously, if your home has a basement, that is the best place to go to shelter if you're in the path of a tornado. If you don't have a basement, the next best place is an interior room in the house. It's usually a bathroom or maybe a closet under a stairwell, whatever room that it does not have any exterior walls that go directly to the outside. Because rooms that have windows or any kind of exterior walls are not as safe from a tornado. And of course, if you have more than one floor, definitely do not shelter on a floor above the ground floor. So anywhere on the second floor is not safe. And of course, nowhere outside is safe from a tornado. So to sum it all up, the main things I want you to take away from this video is that you really need to have an emergency supply kit and an emergency preparedness plan ready to go in case you are impacted by a tropical storm or a hurricane. And finally, talk to your family members about natural disasters. Don't be scared, just get prepared.
If there's one thing we want you to take away from today's video, we don't want you to be scared. We want you to be prepared. You can visit ready.gov, like Andrew mentioned, for more tips and resources on how to be prepared for hurricanes and other natural disasters. You can also check out hurricanes.gov if you're looking for the latest information on active hurricanes ongoing. And you can check out weather.gov if you want to know more about your weather in your local area. So for now, so long.
Well, good morning. My name's David Lowe. When the period of time that we're talking about, I was city manager in Lincoln. And it was about, it's 1989 when Hugo hit, I think, and it's in September, I remember that. So it's almost, what would that be, 31 years ago. Hugo was supposed to come into the coastline in Charleston and swing back north to and run up the coast, and then not have a great deal of impact on the inland areas and the Charlotte region, but that didn't happen. And Hugo hit Charleston, came straight inland, and it started having a big impact on Lincoln at about 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning. At about 4 o'clock, I was rudely awakened and got up and started looking out windows in the house, and I already had trees and limbs and things all around the house on the ground, and I had several big trees out in the area behind you. I once had an old log house down there, and I had trees down across it, and the end result that I had to take it down. But anyhow, I knew I needed to get to City Hall, so I got in my car, and I was able to get out of the driveway okay. Getting from here to City Hall, which is exactly a mile, took me a little over an hour to get there. I'd go up a street, a tree would fall in front of me, and I had to back up and go another street. And I remember down on Laurel Street at what we call Water Tank Hill, I was almost to the top, and 2 trees fell in front of me across the road, 2 big old pine trees. And so I backed up. I was going to turn and go down, come back to Alexander and go back up Oak Street, and a tree fell behind me. So I was sort of boxed in there, and I don't know how many times I had to turn around and back up until I finally got to City Hall. The winds were at that time about 70, 80 miles an hour and gusting higher than that. And we had electricians out trying to restore some of the, which is a fruitless thing they were trying to do, trying to restore some of the electricity to the houses and businesses. And when I got to City Hall, we're supposed to have had a generator so we could have power there, and as good as the generator didn't work. So I had to analyze that and one of our service trucks in the parking lot and take the battery out of it and bring it into City Hall and put it into a generator, and got us some power, which when I did that, the significance of that was I got telephone service restored there, and I got our radio communications restored. So that was a big deal. When I got the radio communications, I called all the trucks that were out servicing things and called them and told them to stop what they were doing and come in at City Hall, and we were going to ride it out there. And once the winds got down to where they were manageable, we'd go back out and try to service people, but they didn't have need to take the risk of getting hurt, particularly in a bucket truck or it just being on the ground and under trees was a hazard. By 7 o'clock that morning, there was not a single electric connection in the Lincoln area working. Everybody was out of power. Everybody wanted to know what was going on and when it was going to be restored. And there's no way, it was kind of a helpless feeling, there's no way to tell them, because we had to sit down. I finally got the fire chief, the public works director, the police chief, and some others that I can't recall. We got them in the city hall, and we made a response plan that we knew was going to be short-lived, but at that time the important thing to do was to get the streets so we could drive a fire truck or an emergency vehicle down them. At the time we had maybe 3 or 4 chainsaws in our total inventory with the city. We went in Sane Hardware, and I don't know how many, we got all they had, and went into Carolina Hardware and did the same thing. We got all the tools and equipment we needed there, and of course we made a list of everything, and by the end of the day doing that, we had the streets where you could actually drive up and down them safely, and the emergency vehicles could use them. So I called a fellow named Billy Joy. Billy was commander of the National Guard in Belmont, who happened to be, they were an engineering unit for the National Guard, and they had bulldozers, and they had front end loaders, and they had big trucks, and I was able to get them to agree to come in and help remove the debris, and they actually worked for us for about 2 weeks doing that. But then things started changing. We realized that as time passed, the priorities changed with it. Of course, the first priority was try to get our emergency and our necessary services back running. The water plant needed to go back on, even back on the waste treatment plant needed to be operating. City Hall was okay because we had a generator that operated the essential services inside of City Hall. The police department happened to be in City Hall at the time, so they had everything they needed. I got in a truck, and I just needed to see what was happening out away from City Hall. I got in a truck, and my goodness, the electric system was just demolished. It was not a single line on any city street that you could see that wasn't down on the ground about. So I came back to City Hall, and I called an agency called Electric Cities, and I never will forget his name. His name Dennis Cameron there, and they had contact with practically all the electrical contractors on the East Coast, and I got them to reserve us 3 complete electric units, which was 6 or 7 men, and a bucket truck, and what we call a line truck, which dig the holes to put the utility poles in. And I got 3 units there. I had Maiden at the time was not hit as bad as Lincoln, and so I got most of the electric department from Maiden and some from Newton, and we just had to make us a plan to restore the power. And Steve Peeler, and Steve was just a great resource, but we got maps, and we made it like a clock. We took Lincoln and drew a circle around Lincoln and all the debris, and we started at 15 minutes to the hour, and we put all of our resources there and worked around. And when we left one area, we were through with it. We went on to the next one, and then we had people that were on life support systems, like I am now. They couldn't get their oxygen. They couldn't get their dialysis. They couldn't get kind of. So we had to move them to the top of our priority list. on Sunday, believe it or not, people started calling, needing to wash clothes, of all things. And they needed a bath. It couldn't be accommodated, I put it that way, but we did have in the city hall a area with it's for the police department, their locker room, and had showers and everything there. So some people came up there and actually used the police department's showers. But then we had to get generators and smaller generators and put at laundromats so people could wash their clothes. And then just in their spare time, we had to figure out a way to feed about 200 people. We had all of these people that came in here from the furthest on the way was from Maine, and I had another one from Massachusetts, and one or two from Virginia. These electrical crews. Well, we had to house them and feed them while they were here. We took the fire department, converted it to a cafeteria, got home folks restaurant, and they brought some of their equipment out of their restaurant and set it up in the fire station. And at first we just fed them cold sandwiches, just ham and mustard and 2 pieces of bread. You know. But then as the day passed, we were able to actually start feeding them some hot food. And we did that for about 2 weeks. It actually turned out we were feeding anywhere from 350 to 400 people a day there. And then I had, there was a place, Waffle House wasn't here at the time, but it was a place out where the car lot there at opposite corner from CVS, ham and eggs was the name of it. I just rented the whole business, and they fed us, and there were several other smaller cafes and things that agreed to prepare food for us. So we came almost to the point we were running out of water. The big line that went out to the water plant was just in shambles, and finally about Sunday afternoon we were able to make the last connection there and got the water plant going. And if we had not gotten it going by the end of that day, we'd have been completely out of water. We were close enough that we had prepared to, when a water line goes empty, you have to sterilize it before you can. So we had prepared the sterilizing agents because we thought we were going to run out of water. And this was a thing that I did that turned out to be a good thing. Everybody thought it was silly at first, but I got everybody a cardboard box and a bunch of notepads, and everything they did, if they'd come to your house and just look at it and see what needed to be done, they wrote that down on that pad, tore it off, threw it in that box. One person might have 30 or 40 notes in that box by the end of a day. And the importance of that is, it turned out, I didn't know it at the time, I wanted to keep a historical record of what was going on. But FEMA came in, and they had a pot full of money that they were offering, but we had to justify it. So I went to my boxes, and we got these little notes out, and we got us some 3-ring binders, and we'd take these notes by the dates on them and posted them in these binders, and then we had to put a value on every one of them to see what it cost us, and made us $500,000. But That's another thing that being a city manager and knowing how much money we had to spend for the city. About Monday night, all of a sudden it hit me that I was spending about $150,000, $200,000 a day that we didn't have, or it was we had it, but it was supposed to support a lot of people, where it was being diverted singularly to the Hugo effort, and this FEMA thing saved that, because they pretty much reimbursed us. That went on until, well, I stayed at the city hall from Friday until Wednesday, and that's 24 hours a day, and every time I could, when the switchboard had 6 lines, and I tried to touch base, let somebody talk to somebody that was calling in every time. Well, at first it was just me, and then Carol Hebner was mayor at the time, and Carol came up and I taught him how to use the switchboard and put him to work for a while, and then we were able to get some of the ladies there at City Hall to come to work and work 8-hour shifts. But there, by Monday or late Monday, every time somebody called, they got a person, just about, and that was good, because like other towns, they had to declare an emergency situation. We didn't. Our people stayed calm and pretty much understanding of the situation, and willing to make the sacrifice to see we got through it. But all in all, we had like 150, sometimes 200 people working to see that it got done. And on Tuesday night, after Friday morning, everybody was completely out of electricity. On Tuesday night at midnight, we cut the last person's electricity back on. All in all, Hugo was a horrific thing to go through, but it taught us a lot. It taught us in public works and public utilities, and our police and our fire department, our emergency management people, the EMTs. It taught all of us a good lesson on how to respond to a true emergency. And I think some of that still holds true today.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeff, and I'm with Jonas Library here in Lincoln County. Since you've learned local facts about hurricanes that have affected our area, today we're going to talk about a hurricane that inspired the book, I Survived Hurricane Katrina 2005. I would like to give you some facts concerning that hurricane. Katrina was formed on August 23rd, 2005, and it first made landfall in the south area of Florida on August 29th, 2005. Katrina stalled over the Gulf of Mexico, gaining strength. The eye of the storm hit the Gulf Coast near Burris, Louisiana on August 29th. 50,000 people sought refuge at the New Orleans Convention Center and the Superdome. Hurricane Katrina and its aftermath killed around 1,833 people. Katrina is the costliest hurricane in U.S. history, costing over $125 billion. Katrina had a lasting impact on the region and its people. Katrina was considered a Category 5 hurricane, which is the highest category a hurricane can be classified as. Katrina started to form like I said, on August 23rd, 2005, and Katrina finally broke up on August 31st, 2005. New Orleans and Mississippi were among the hardest hit in the U.S. 75% of New Orleans was flooded. The effects of Hurricane Katrina can be felt even today in those areas. Now that you've learned the facts of Hurricane Katrina, here is a fictional book you could dive into called I Survived Hurricane Katrina 2005. The horror of Hurricane Katrina is brought to you vividly in this fictional account of a boy, a dog, and the storm of the century. Barry's family tries to evacuate before Hurricane Katrina hits their home in New Orleans. But when Barry's little sister gets terribly sick, they're forced to stay home and wait out the storm. At first, Katrina doesn't seem to be as bad as predicted. But overnight, the levees break and Barry's world is literally torn apart. He's swept away by the floodwaters and away from his family. Can he survive the storm of the century alone? Thank you for joining me today. If you would like to check out this I Survived Hurricane Katrina book or other books about hurricanes from your local library, please visit and see what they have available.